Okay, so now let's talk about the loops. So a loop is another type of control structure. So similar to if you recall the if-else statements and stuff, it breaks the regular sequential order of how the program is read, and rather than just going in that like top to bottom, exactly that order, it goes and follows a change that occurs. So um if I do any loop, honestly, it'll go through whatever's inside the body of the loop and it'll keep checking a condition. And until that condition is met, it won't stop doing that loop. And only after it is met, then it'll go to the next line of code after the loop. So the first loop I'll show you is a while loop. So a while loop checks for a condition to be true. And if the condition is true, then I'll keep going. But if the condition is false, it will exit. So if um let's make up a variable named counter and put it at 0. So while counter equals 0, if you recall, this is the comparison operator that checks if two things are the same. It will print the counter is at, and then it will do counter plus equals 1. So here what happens is it prints what the counter is at, and then it adds 1 to the counter. So rather than equals 1, let's do smaller than or equal to 10. Okay, so look what happens here. Let's just take this out real quick. We don't need that now. But what it does is the first time it goes in, the counter was set to 0. So what it does is the counter is less than 10. 0 is less than 10. So it prints the counter is at and whatever value the counter is, which is 0. So it says the counter is at 0. And then it adds 1 to the counter. Then it goes back to the top and checks for this condition. Okay, so now 0 plus 1 is 1. Is 1 less than 10? Yes. So continue this loop. So now what it does is it prints the counter is at whatever the value the counter is, which now is 1. Then it adds 1 to the counter. And it does this all the way until it gets to 10. Now when you go to 10, 10 is still equal to 1, but because um we have 10, it'll print 10. But at the end, it still adds 1 to the counter. So now once it's added 1, now we're at 11. The counter is 11. But 11 is not less than or equal to 10. So now it stops and it doesn't print the counter. But if you see, if I print counter separately outside of the loop, now the counter is at 11 because it did this final addition at the end and then it checked for the condition. So it does matter where you put this increment of your value. Now, other than this while for a number, like while counter, right, you can use other things as well. So I can say um while uh hmm, yeah, I can't really think of an example right now, but there are other ways you can use it as well. Now, that was while loops. Now let me show you for loops. So I'm just going to comment this out for now. Move this down. If I do, so what a for loop does is it goes through a set of data, and for each value in that set, it will perform the action. So if I do for name in list of duck names, print name. What happens here is it creates a variable named name, and it sets that variable to the first value, the first item in the list of duck names. So it sets name to Jimmy first, and then it runs whatever's in here. So what does it run? It runs this print statement, and it prints the name, which is Jimmy. So what it'll do is it prints Jimmy. Now, after it's done this code, it goes back to this, and once again, it sets name to the next item in the list, which now is Tom. So now name equals Tom, and it prints whatever name is, which is Tom. And that's why we have Tom here. And then it does that for every single item. So it does it for Timmy and Billy as well. That's what you would have if you iterate through a list. So iterating is when you go through, it's essentially when you go for each item in the list, or really each item in anything. It doesn't necessarily need to be a list, it could be something else too. Now, an example of what else it could be is if I had like a set of numbers. So if I have 1 to 10, right? I want it to print the number it's at whatever number, yeah, print whatever number it's at until it reaches 10. So kind of like how this counter thing worked, right? I can do pretty much exactly that in a for loop as well. Oh, what just happened here? I forgot. There we go. So now I can do for I in range 5, print I plus number. Oh, whoops. There we go. So if you use a comma, by the way, you can still put um, a different data type along with the string, or a different data type with a different data type. If you use plus, of course, it wouldn't work because they're two different data types. That's why I got an error earlier. But yeah, that's why this works. Now, let me explain what I did just now. So first, I made this thing, the for loop, and I set this variable named I. Now, it sets I to whatever number is inside this range 5. So you type range and you put in these two parentheses and you put in whatever number it is. So essentially what it does is range, the range of 5 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or actually it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because this number is not inclusive and we always start from 0. So we have 5 numbers right here and it goes up to 4. And that's why we got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And as I said earlier, it sets this variable named I to equal whatever the item is in this list, which is actually the range of 5. So you can kind of think of it as having made a list of numbers going up to 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 are all in a list. And then it sets I to equal each item in this list. So I equals 0, 0 is the current number. Then it checks this again, sets I equal to 1, 1 is the current number. And it does that until it gets to 4 because the range is 4. Or the last number in the range is 4. Yeah, and that's how I use this. Now, you don't necessarily need to use I. You can actually name it whatever you want. So I could name it number and use number, and it works perfectly fine. And the same thing applies for this other for loop that I had showed earlier. So in here, I don't necessarily need to name it name. I could name it duck and say print duck, and it will work perfectly fine. So this can literally be whatever you want. It's like you're making a new variable, but yeah, it's pretty much like you're making a new variable. Yeah, that's about all it is for loops. One thing I forgot to mention about lists, by the way, is the special thing about Python lists is that you don't need to have everything be the same data type. So although I had everything in this list of duck names be a string, I can actually have it be like a number as well, have a number in there, or I could have a float in there, or I could have a Boolean in there as well. So although we wouldn't use it for a list of duck names, maybe we would use it as a list of characteristics of this is a characteristics, right? And I could store its characteristics in here. So name is John. He is 5 years old. He has a 4.5 meter per minute swim rate, and he is cool. right? We can say this, and this also works. And in that case, I could also change this to being duck1 characteristics print duck. And now it'll print each of the characteristics about him.